Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Future of Work stage at CogX Festival 2021. My name is Sammy. I've been your host here for the last couple days and very excited to welcome you to the last session of the conference and of this stage. The topic is Tech for Leaders, Decision Making 2.0, where we will be discussing how many business leaders and decision makers believe AI will transform how decisions are made. And Gartner suggests AI augmentation will create up to 2.9 trillion in business value by the end of 2021. We're at the dawn of a new era in AI, where a new kind of partnership between humans and machines is fast emerging. In this session, our speaker, David Benigson, who is the founder of Signal AI, will share with us how AI-supported decision-making and this new way of decision augmentation will forever change the way that we work. I'm very excited to welcome to the stage David. Hello there. I will be moderating the chat and getting some questions and bringing those to you at the end. So for those of you watching, I encourage you to please use the chat and engage with us. And at the end, we can discuss with David all of your questions. So I'll hand the floor to you and I'll see you at the end.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm David Benigson. I'm the CEO and founder of decision augmentation company called Signal AI. I founded Signal AI 8 years ago in a garage, of course, where else do startups begin, with my co-founder, data scientist, Dr. Miguel Martinez, who was finishing his PhD in machine learning and artificial intelligence technology at the time. We founded the business under the premise of some major global trends converging: the exploding volume and velocity of data available to businesses, the pressure and need to better understand the perception, reputation, and risk associated with global organizations, and third, the fast emerging power of AI technology to transform those challenges into opportunities. Our thesis has been to aggregate the world's data in real time and use AI to augment how companies can monitor, analyze, respond, and get ahead of risks and opportunities. It's great to be here at CogX. Thank you for having me. And I wanted to start today by telling you a story. In 1811, a group of textile workers took a secret oath and a stand by burning and smashing the machines that they feared would automate their work and livelihoods. The group was led by the mythical figure of Ned Ludd. Think Mel Gibson in Braveheart, but less tartan kilt and more silk frock. Ned started a region-wide rebellion centered in Nottingham that lasted 5 years and saw both thousands of machines destroyed and many more deaths from these gallant protesters. At one point, it was said that there were more British soldiers fighting Ned Ludd and the Luddites than Napoleon during the Great War. And although the word Luddite has since developed a negative connotation for those irrationally opposed to technological advancements, I think that group of revolutionists are simply one example out of countless throughout human history where mankind has demonstrated an ingrained fear in change, especially when that change is brought about by the intangible magic of technology. And today, I think we find ourselves close to the summit of a similar wave of fear and hyperbole as we enter a new dawn and a new technological era, the age of augmented intelligence. We can all be excused from suffering from a certain level of heightened paranoia in today's times. From Ex Machina to Cambridge Analytica, it's almost daily that we encounter these dire warnings and grandiose prophecies detailing how the onset of artificial intelligence is set to usher in the destruction of mankind. Great figures warn us that robots will take our jobs and the government will be forced to pay our wages. Philosophers tell us that machines outperforming humans when it comes to intelligence is a foregone conclusion, that AI will step over human capacity like we might step over an ant, and that if we're going to build a god, it better be a god that we can live with. Even admired world leaders say your mattress will monitor your nightmare and will lead to pink-eyed terminators sent back from the future to cull the human race. And although I'm pretty perturbed by this pink-eyed mattress sneaking a peek at my nightmares, maybe, like you, I'm just kind of frustrated that Alexa doesn't work that well, as were the parents of this small child when instead of cartoons, Alexa decided to bring back clips of pornography. And I find the simple struggles of machine learning failing to disambiguate between these cute chihuahuas and even cuter muffins during a live demonstration pretty amusing. But studies such as MMC Ventures showed us that something like 40% of technology companies claiming they use AI actually don't. And when Andrew Ng, who's the closest thing to Mick Jagger that we have in artificial intelligence, said recently that worrying about AI that's going to end humanity is similar to worrying about the overpopulation on the planet Mars, then I think there is a question for all of us today, trying to grapple with the hype machine. How do we remove the emotion and hyperbole and arrive at a more balanced view on how this technology will impact us and our lives in the coming decades? As a practitioner in this space, working at the coalface of applied AI for the last 8 years, I remain convinced that these technologies are more likely to augment humankind in partnership and collaboration to generate value than some of the more dystopian visions of superintelligence enslaving mankind. So perhaps a little more of this and a little less of this. And so if we've entered a new dawn and a new technological era, the age of augmented intelligence, then what does this augmented future look like? Well, I think the reality is that we find ourselves at this future is already upon us. When we pick up our phones and ask Siri for directions, when we hop in an Uber or discover a new Spotify. My grandmother was the matriarch of my family, someone I never got a chance to know beyond my infant years. She suffered from breast cancer, and today perhaps she would have had a better chance of recovery. A recent study in America demonstrated that AI performed almost twice as likely as well at spotting high-risk patients as unassisted doctors. MIT have trained an algorithm with 90,000 mammograms that can predict breast cancer up to 5 years in advance. This year, where the pandemic has met our most primal fears of extinction, we've been working on a fascinating project at Signal AI with members of the G7 to better understand consumer sentiment responding to their policies and the changing landscape related to COVID. We explored what affects vaccine confidence and how EU governments can ensure they're communicating effectively with the public to avoid issues of misinformation and awareness on this vital topic. We analyzed the media along with survey data to unearth the drivers that lead to someone ultimately getting vaccinated or not. Another example of a fascinating project we worked on was the research that we created looking at Biden's first 100 days of presidency and trying to understand media perception related to those. By analyzing more than 200 million articles, our AIQ, what we call our Decision Augmentation Solutions brain, identified the most proximate topics to Joe Biden during the first 3 months of his presidency. And that data can be used to actually preempt and predict where he might take that next. After a year of a global pandemic and the real emergence of stakeholder capitalism, where companies and their actions are being held more accountable than ever, we are working with one of the world's largest professional service firms, Ernst & Young, in co-creating a trust score to identify the trustworthiness and perception of organizations as they go through an audit process. This enables better decisions by creating custom machine learning models on critical pillars of trust, ethics, financial scandal, brand perception. Ernst & Young has saved hundreds of thousands of analysts' time by dynamically monitoring trust. But more importantly, our partnership has led to a different process in key decision-making altogether and created a way to quantify meaningful non-financial measures. And it's not just limited to the business world. Even in our creative industries, often espoused as the last bastion where technology could provide impact, from artwork designed by AI selling at Sotheby's for hundreds of thousands of dollars, to the design of cars with a human-like nervous system, something never possible prior to the integration of man and machine working in partnership, even to the creation of music, like this Wiz Khalifa track, which got into the iTunes top 10, where artificial intelligence was used to search through millions of conversations, newspaper titles, and lectures based on the main theme of the song, Heartbreak. Then after they defined the theme, machine learning algorithms programmed to create music found different musical elements, which gave them the idea of how this piece should sound. And so we find ourselves at a moment where these technologies will weave themselves into almost every aspect and corner of our lives. And that symbiosis has the potential to empower and enhance us beyond our wildest imagination. But like all great powers, we must not overlook the perils. But I would argue that the challenges are more nuanced than Terminators and robots, but yet no less relevant or important for us to grapple with. Whether that be ethics and the impact on data privacy and data efficacy, imbalances in data sets, meaning that AI models do not perform as well for some groups as for others, examples of AI judicial courts prosecuting certain minorities more aggressively than others, hiring systems choosing male candidates over female, medical systems in Alzheimer's working on native English speakers but not on patients who have emigrated, or the troubling occurrence of Google seemingly firing some of its top AI ethics researchers. Concerns about regulation and who should take ownership for building and enforcing the correct frameworks for this technology. We all watched on a few years ago as US senators bumbled through their cross-examination of Mark Zuckerberg. And I don't think, given the previous quote from Boris Johnson, he's given us any more confidence of his understanding of these technologies. And yet, can this industry be trusted to regulate itself? Do we want people profiting from this technology to be the ones deciding how we manage it? We all watched on in April with interest this year as the EU released its AI regulation, what it calls the first ever legal framework on AI. And there are also the civic challenges, with the reality that the impact of this technology will be unevenly felt across the socio-economic spectrum. Like in the time of Ned Ludd, the jobs most likely to be automated could be those of lower skilled workers or of people from less economically privileged backgrounds. How do we ensure that the benefits of this technology are fairly distributed? How can we empower organizations like the Oxford and Turing Institute, or former CTO of the US Megan Smith's company, Shift7, or Dr. Vivian Ming at Sokos Labs, these people who grapple daily with these concerns and are looking to use AI to make better humans? And if it's these sorts of challenges we must rise and respond to if this age of augmented potential is to be positively realized. At Signal AI, we believe we're creating the first decision augmentation solution to help our customers and clients sift through the deluge of data and be able to make informed and confident decisions. And so to sum up, I urge all of you here today to reject the hype, challenge the negative, the hyperbole, and the world around us, remain curious and cautiously optimistic about how AI can add real value to the world. We can either respond to these challenges like Ned by smashing machines and turning our back on progress, or we can rise to our fullest potential to overcome these challenges I outlined and unlock the greatest resource humankind has ever had access to. Signal AI and others are not alone on this journey. Gartner recently predicted that by 2030, decision augmentation will surpass all other types of AI initiatives to account for 44% of global AI-derived business value. We look forward to helping to drive this new category of business. Today, we are entering a new technological age, that of decision augmentation, and I think it is a future well worth looking forward to. Thank you very much. Please do feel free to reach out if you'd like to ask any questions or let me know how we might be able to help you in your organization at Signal AI. I'm going to end now with a short video on decision augmentation. Thank you.
For business leaders, every decision means business. Buy or sell, go local or outsource, invest or scale back. The volume and variety of sources is overwhelming. With so much going on, it's hard to see what direction to move in. You're making decisions in the dark. Imagine a solution that understands you and your decision-making needs, instantly surfacing the right information that can help. A technology where the more you interact with it, the more it anticipates your needs. Quickly understanding what you want when you ask a question, without needing to explain. Imagine making decisions with total confidence. Introducing Decision Augmentation. Trainable AI learns your unique context and monitors the world to surface what you need to know, augmenting your knowledge and giving you the insight you need to act confidently. Create a true human-machine partnership using AI to sift through the best mix of data on your behalf, finding what you need to know and don't want to miss. No more winging it. No more worrying about missing something your competitor knows. No more wobbling on decisions because of information you can't see. Bringing essential knowledge to everyday decision-making means decision makers, breakers, and shakers like you can move with confidence at every turn. For business leaders, every decision means business. Signal AI, transforming how decisions are made.
All right. Wow. Thank you so much, David, for your talk and your input. Sorry, just checking here. Good. I'm intrigued. I will say I am intrigued. I am a very community-based person. I love human connection. And I think there's probably many people out there that feel the same. But you touched on these partnerships between humans and machines. And I wonder if is there other types of partnerships you can see outside of decision making, or are you focused on this kind of decision making thing in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, no, thank you, and great question. Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is, as I was trying to allude to in the talk, was that symbiosis, if you like, that creep and integration between man and machine, it has very much accelerated and is already upon us. And that is having an impact and can be felt in almost every aspect of our lives. So as I said, when you search for a song on Spotify and it recommends something, that intuitive moment where it recommends a song that is a great fit for your taste, but you haven't asked for it, or when you order something and it suggests a new product that you weren't looking for. We're having all of these moments in our personal lives and increasingly in our work lives where that integration is happening already, and it's just much more subtle than I think we acknowledge or realize. I think actually the consumer worlds that we operate in have accelerated faster in some ways than they have in the enterprise context. And whilst AI is starting to make very practical and significant changes into the enterprise, I think there does need to be a mindset shift with businesses to start thinking about how they can more effectively adopt these technologies and bring them in to solve real problems for their companies.
Yeah, fair point. And I mean, maybe I'm also in communications. Maybe there's a bit of a communications challenge there as well, because most of us, I don't know, when you think about AI, we do think about robots taking over our jobs. But in the ways that you've explained, this kind of subtle AI augmentation, I, for one, find that helpful. I love my Spotify recommendations. So maybe we need to shift the conversation around it too, to show people the different applications of the technology.
No, I think so.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, I was going to say, and celebrate the very positive stories. I referenced Dr. Vivian Ming, who's someone I admire greatly as a practitioner in AI, and she talks about using AI, augmented intelligence, to help make better humans. And she's got some fantastic examples, of how this technology can be applied very practically, help with very real problems, in a very meaningful way. As an example, her son suffers from diabetes, and she used machine learning and artificial intelligence to build a tool that would alert her if his blood glucose levels dropped to a worrying degree. Or she used facial recognition technology to connect lost refugees with their families in refugee camps. And so, these are very personal, practical examples of how these technologies, if applied correctly, can solve really meaningful and tangible problems for both humanity and for organizations and individuals alike. Yeah,
great examples. I just want to encourage people who are still watching to ask questions in the chat. If you'd like to ask David something, anything at all, I'm sure he'd be open to it. So there is a couple questions already, though. One is from Georgie asking, do you have any more examples at Signal AI you can talk about from an applied AI point of view in terms of decision augmentation?
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. There are many examples that I can think of, and obviously gave a couple during the speech. I mean, one of the areas that we're seeing a fascinating necessity for this sort of technology is in kind of ingredient and supply chain risk. Organizations rely significantly on huge numbers of counterparties and suppliers to deliver the services they provide to the world. One of the products that we've been developing is helping these organizations track and monitor issues related to those suppliers or related to the ingredients that they use in products. So, for example, we were working with one of the world's largest FMCG businesses. They asked us to monitor and track 5,000 of their most used ingredients. We built a risk index that surfaced for them early warning signs when there were issues building up in relation to those ingredients. And as an example, one of the ingredients they use in sunscreen products, we were about a year early in spotting that ingredient was starting to be recognized as damaging for coral reefs and beach life. And about a year later, that issue hit mainstream media and became a massive deal for many consumer goods companies. But we were able to spot and alert our client to that risk very, very early and fundamentally.
Awesome. Wow. Okay. I'm really learning so much about like the different applications of this at the moment. Another question, and you already kind of started touching on this, but what are other common challenges that you see yourself solving for your clients?
Yeah, so we see this convergence between 3 or 4 key areas for large organizations. I think particularly in the last year, some of these trends have been accelerated with the global health pandemic, the climate crisis, issues around race and inequality, ESG. I think organizations have a responsibility for the first time to be really thoughtful about reputation, about trust, about perception, and the risks associated for organizations with not living up to the values that we expect as consumers can be really damaging. And so what Signal provides for businesses is essentially like a radar to help them enable them to detect changes in perception, in trust, in proximity to certain topics and issues, and enable these organizations to then get ahead of those issues faster and more efficiently, and understand also what consumers care about. You know, what is driving the conversation, what does affect consumer sentiment, and then can they, align themselves with the values of the consumers that they're trying to service.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine that your clients and this technology is something that bigger companies are going to be able to implement. What about for smaller companies? Is this something that's going to be accessible for them as well? Small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think ultimately there is a democratization that will occur, I think, of this technology where, as I say, all aspects of both our personal lives and the enterprise will be affected. I mean, I think ultimately we're not going to have artificial intelligence technology companies anymore, in the same way that we don't have internet companies or digital companies anymore. We just have businesses that provide a service and they happen to be enabled by AI. And so that's one of the big trends I think we'll see. And I think that will have an effect both on large companies as well as small ones.
Okay, interesting. So this stage has been about the future of work in general and really about crafting work to be more fair, productive, but also fair and inclusive. And we've talked a lot in different sessions about the humanness of that and the importance of recognizing our humanness. And I feel like I've already made the distinction between how we're applying the technology you're talking about and the difference in maybe machines taking over the world, or I don't know, something dystopia, like you said. But I wondered if you could say a bit about where you see if there are any boundaries that we need to be setting in this sense of respecting and valuing our humanness, and then the real partnership that's really supporting humans in our greatest potential, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think ultimately we have to treat and realize that these tools and technologies that we're developing are exactly that. They are tools. They are the hammer, and we're the person putting the hand around the hammer, if you like, and using it for either good or for bad. And so I think we have a responsibility to think about how we want to apply the technology and how we want what problems we want to help solve and what value we can add in doing so. I think for a long time now, or certainly for the last 5 to 10 years, since this technology has really started to accelerate, the companies leading the charge in innovation have been responsible for kind of setting those frameworks and boundaries, whether that be ethical or regulatory. And I think within that has been, not everyone has been equal in terms of their thoughtfulness about how to use the tools available. And so I do think there is a responsibility either from government, as we've seen with the EU regulation, or with kind of ethics frameworks like the one that's been set up here in the UK, to be able to start govern and provide frameworks for us to make better decisions about how and the utility of these technologies, where that's going to be most effective. Because I think that ultimately, we as humans, we have a big responsibility as to how these technologies are going to be used and deployed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. There's just another question asking if what is that? What is it? Yes, what is it that makes Signal AI tech so unique?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been 8 years of development, and there's no single silver bullet when it comes to building a platform like Signals. It's a combination of the diversity of data and the breadth of data that we access. It's the machine learning capabilities that we've developed over these last 8 years, which has been trained by our clients. And so when we partner with organizations like Deloitte or EY or members of the G7, they're training up our machine learning models to take concepts that are proprietary to them and knowledge, domain expertise that they hold within their organization, and training our platform and our technology with this data. And as they train it, the system gets smarter and more evolved and more relevant over time. And then ultimately, having all of that technology and all of that data is useless if you can't apply it effectively. And so we've also spent a lot of time thinking about how do we deliver that value to the market and to our customers, whether that's through a suite of SaaS products, which are very intuitive and easy to use, or whether that's access to our underlying platform through our API capabilities, which they can integrate, or whether that's through the sort of partnerships we've developed with the EYs and Deloittes of this world, where they're actually taking all of that value, productizing it, and then delivering it to their own customers in the sort of format that their customers can find most consumable.
Okay, yeah. So each individual company that's using it is training the system in their own way. Sorry,
Exactly.
if my questions are very basic on the tech of it, but then they're training it for themselves, or it's training the system in general, and so those learnings are applied across Signal AI.
Both, actually. So that when the client trains up a specific taxonomy or creates their own framework, that is proprietary and personalized to them. But overall and generally, as more and more users use our technology and our platform, and as more of that training knowledge is embedded in our algorithms, it is distributed and generalized across the system. So overall, the system is evolving and becoming smarter and more sophisticated over time. One of the other capabilities that we've been developing over these last few years is a knowledge graph. And the way that knowledge graph works is, as we aggregate all of this data and extract all of this knowledge, we populate this knowledge graph with billions and billions of relationships that we map between companies, people, products, ingredients, diseases, risks, issues, trends. And we enable our customers to start navigating that knowledge graph and finding unique connections in those relationships and proximity. So we can unearth for our clients and help them ask and then answer increasingly sophisticated questions like, who are the emerging competitors I need to be worried about? Are there new regulations that are going to emerge in a jurisdiction that might affect my business? Are there reputational threats building up in my supply chain? What do my consumers think about a particular issue or topic that I'm related to? And so it's answering these sophisticated questions through this knowledge graph that we've been building up that is starting to deliver really, I think, quite impactful value for our clients and customers.
Nice. Because I'm particularly interested, do you have any practical examples of how the technology is being used in terms of ESG standards?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ESG is, as I mentioned before, a fascinating area, obviously hugely growing in popularity and importance. And I think, of course, rightly so. I think one of the challenges, both for companies, corporates who have a set of ESG principles or objectives, or importantly, asset managers, investors who are going to deploy cash in ESG, ESG positive or ESG quality businesses. How do you actually measure how those companies are doing in the wild? They may say certain things in their company disclosures. They say, oh, we're going to be carbon neutral by 2025, or we're going to have this kind of policy around diversity and inclusion. But actually, when they're out in the wild, how do you track, monitor, and quantify whether they are actually performing against any of those objectives that they've set themselves? So there is a deluge of unstructured data out there that can actually lead to really powerful insights as to whether they are or they aren't. Now, there's a lot of ratings products and technology out there who do a really important job rating the company based on an inside-out view, what the company says they're going to do, and what they put in their policy papers and disclosures about their performance towards ESG, and they get a rating for that. And what we feel at Signal is we can provide an outside-in view. We can give a perspective of how that company is actually performing in the wild through analyzing all of that external unstructured data that we have access to.
Do you imagine then the rating systems that are in place and Signal then collaborating at some point, or will these just be different viewpoints that we see?
No, I think ultimately having a holistic picture is going to become really important. And so that those sorts of partnerships and conversations is certainly something that we're both exploring and very open to, of course.
Nice. And just for clarity reasons and inclusivity, ESG is environmental social governance standards, and something that companies are being more and more encouraged and hopefully regulated to include in their bottom lines. So as we come up to the end, I just want to ask you, what is the thing you want to leave the audience with? What should everyone be taking home right now?
Yeah, I think in some ways everyone has a little bit of a responsibility in this topic. It's to be open and be informed, and ultimately kind of reject the hype, as I said during my speech, and challenge the negative narrative that's out there. And I think be curious and excited about the possibilities of what augmented intelligence can bring to the world. I think it is a very exciting moment and inflection point for society and for technology in general. And so I'd welcome everyone to experiment and engage with this very important topic.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Very nice last words. Thank you so much, David, for your input and for your work. I'm excited to see where this all can go. And thank you for everyone that's been watching and for your questions. It has been 3 jam-packed days of info at this CogX Festival 2021. Here on the Future of Work stage, we have touched on so many different things. As I said, a lot focused on our humanness, our multifaceted beings, the multifaceted beings that we are, and how we allow ourselves to come fully to our workplaces and engage with our colleagues and our managers. We've talked a lot about the inequalities that the pandemic has highlighted, gender equality, racial inequality, and how people are working all across the globe to highlight these inequalities and overcome them. In some places using technology to support us in these challenges. But then again, the boundaries that we need to be setting when it comes to employing new things as we move forward, just to make sure that we are including everyone along the way, and that they don't inhibit or fall on people in different ways. Sorry for my lack of words. But thank you all so much for being here. And for engaging with the entire festival. I think that the platform is still open for a bit if you want to see who else is still online and try to connect and network before the day is finished. From my side, have a great evening. If it's sunny where you are, get out in the sun, stretch your legs, and thank you. Have a great evening.